becoming a social leper. The issue has divided the school community, and it's a test case, because there are many other children in schools throughout the South who are also carrying the AIDS virus, but whose identities are not known. There are other issues too. How should the education and health authorities handle such a problem? How much power can be exercised by parents? How can such panic be avoided in the future? By coincidence, a similar situation arose in New York this week, where thousands of parents are keeping their children away from school. We'll be reporting from America later in this program. We'll also be talking to parents, doctors, and educationalists. But we start with the events at Chandlers Ford during the past few days. The school, Scantabout Primary, is sited on one of the many residential estates in Chandlers Ford. A week ago, the parents of children at the school were told at a meeting that one of the pupils, a 9-year-old boy, had antibodies to the AIDS virus in his blood. He's a haemophiliac, and some of the plasma he'd used as part of his regular treatment was contaminated. Hampshire Education Authority made it clear then that the boy was not suffering from the actual deadly virus itself, but he is a potential carrier. There was a very, very small chance that he could develop the disease in the next 5 years. The Education Department said the boy would remain at the school and be taught in his classroom as normal. They said the risk to other pupils was absolutely minimal. The only way he can pass on the antibodies is through transfer of blood or through close sexual contact. And as an extra precaution, 2 adults would take it in turns to be at his side to keep a constant watch on his activities and ensure there was no chance that other pupils could come into contact with his blood. Most children have been at the school as normal this week, but some parents were unconvinced by the assurances. Throughout the past 5 days, up to 50 pupils have been kept away from the school. Some parents have demanded the boy's removal, others have said that if he stays, they'll consider sending their own children to another school. It's divided the community, and feelings have been running high.
My son is at home not being educated, but at least I've got the presence of mind to know that he will be in that state for the rest of his life. At least I'm taking him away from that environment that may give him something that could terminate his life.
So what's the option?
The opposite at the moment, I'm not really sure, but I'm not prepared at this moment, and my mind may change if they can come up with different documentary advice, but at the moment my mind will not change. At the moment he will stay away from school.
The majority of the parents there want their children to get back to school and the school to run back to normal. Like I said earlier, there's a few parents there that feel that that shouldn't be the case, then they should pull their children out and send them to another school.
You'll fight to keep the boy at the school?
Well, yeah, there's no problem. I mean, the boy can carry on going to school. There is no problem whatsoever.
What do you think the solution is? For the boy to remain here and the others to be transferred, or the other way around?
I think it's a very difficult decision for anybody to make, and I don't think I'm in a position to really make any comment on that. I would leave it to higher authorities, I'm afraid. Perhaps that's being rather negative, but it's not up to me.
Has this split the local community?
Yes, I think so. I think it definitely has. Which is a very sad thing and very bad for the children. And let's face it, it's the children that what all this is about.
In reality, there's no division. We have opposing views, if you like, or doubts about whether our children should attend, and that's an individual's decision. But there's no animosity in the community at all. Just fear, I think, in some cases.
The parents of the boy at the heart of the controversy were told 4 months ago that he had AIDS antibodies in his blood. Although they were under no legal obligation to do so, they informed the headmaster immediately and said they wanted the parents of all the other children at the school to be told about his condition.
All we could do was to present our case to the other parents, and they would make their own decision, but we both felt that they should make their own decisions based on as much information as possible, and not make their decisions based on anything they didn't know or just rumours that they'd heard. After they've made their decision, then obviously we would have to go along one way or the other with what that decision might be.
Maybe as he gets older, he could be regarded as a social leper. But we think if he is brought up with people knowing about his problems, then that knowledge will stop ignorance, and therefore they will carry on being sensible and friendly to him.
Is that why you have decided to speak to the press?
Well, yes. The first thing, of course, is that we, all the way through, we have not hidden anything. It is nothing to be ashamed of on our part. We're interested in other people's children, we're interested in our own child. We want everyone to be aware of the problems, social problems as well, so that all together we can come to a sensible solution. And this obviously affects other people in the country in the same situation as we are.
Nothing can be gained by ignorance. It's no good hiding it away, because nothing can be gained by that. So this is why we want it to be out in the open. If they want to keep their children away from school, they have a choice to find other schools for their children if they feel that strongly. But we feel that Peter deserves a fair chance at school as well, and we want him to remain amongst his friends here.
AIDS was first identified in 1978. After infecting the homosexual community of America, it was subjected to worldwide publicity and a deal of misinformation. The popular press in Britain called it the gay plague, to the dismay of the medical profession. Doctors believe this hindered the flow of funds into vital research. AIDS is not infectious in a casual context. A significant amount of infected blood or semen must be received by a victim before the AIDS virus is transferred. And even then, it's not lethal in many cases, because the victim builds up antibodies in the blood as protection. It's believed that no one has ever contracted AIDS through saliva, tears, or sweat, or that any infected haemophiliac, like young Peter at Chandlers Ford, has ever transferred the virus in any other circumstance than through sexual contact. AIDS has been alarming because it's new, it's deadly, and it's spread rapidly. America is several years ahead of the UK. There are now more than 12,000 cases, and there have been more than 6,000 deaths. The estimated total number of AIDS carriers has now reached 1.2 million. In the UK, there are 206 cases, the vast majority of which are homosexual. The deaths total has reached 114, and there are thought to be around 10,000 potential carriers. AIDS has severely affected many of the 5,000 haemophilia sufferers in Britain, more than half of whom have been at risk. The estimated figure of those who are potentially infectious stands at between 1,500 and 2,000. Of the school-age population, the total number of children at risk from the AIDS virus is around 550. Fewer than half that number are potentially infectious. So there are likely to be many more cases in our schools like Peter at Chandlers Ford, but their identities are not known. Well, Dr. Morag Chisholm is the director of the Southampton Haemophilia Centre. Now, you look after Peter. Can we get one thing straight right from the start? How was Peter's blood contaminated? Was it this Bournemouth AIDS victim or was it not?
It was definitely not. It's been reported nationally that it was. That is incorrect. Peter did not receive his HTLV antibody from that blood. He was infected with the virus at some point over the past few years from the factorate, which is a concentrate prepared from donor's blood. Most of it is imported from America, and that is the source of his antibody.
Right, so we've cleared up one piece of misinformation at least. Now, Peter's case has stolen the headlines, there's no doubt about that. A Times leader this morning even called it the Scantabout syndrome, as if this was a single case. But Peter's case is not a single case, is it?
Right, that's another piece of information that's been incorrect. Peter is one of about 4,500 haemophiliacs in the country, and about half of them are severely affected and require treatment with factor VIII. And we're still collecting figures, but the percentage of children like that is probably about 60 to 70% of haemophiliacs who are treated are carrying this HTLV3 antibody. So it's a common finding in haemophiliacs. But this is the antibody, this is not the disease.
Right.
A handful of people, not the disease.
But we've all been talking about Peter at Scantabout Primary School. There are several other Peters, aren't there, that you know about, but that other parents don't, in the county of Hampshire?
Well, that's right. I mean, I have 40 haemophiliacs in the centre, and a large number of them are school children, and about half of those have got the antibody, so it's a common occurrence.
So what do you think? Should they all go public now?
No, I feel that there is no health risk, and this is really the crux of the whole matter. I think if there was shown to be any health risk to other children associated with the presence of this antibody in these children's blood, then it would have to be known. But this is clearly established. There is no health risk.
But if there's no health risk, why hide anything?
Well, I mean, it's confidential information. You can see the effect that it's had disclosing this information. I mean, we don't tell people what our sort of medical status is. It is purely a personal decision that Peter's parents took, but there was no compulsion for them to do it. And I don't think any of us wish our health status to be known to others. There is no health risk, and therefore it's not necessary.
You're implying that the revelations about Peter this week have had a bad effect, but Scantabout looks as though it's proving reveal all pays dividends in the long run. Only 13 away this morning.
Well, I think that, my feeling was that it perhaps could have been prevented, that had information been fed in a different way, there might have not been that explosion, and clearly a lot of people have been very, very distressed by it. And I think had it been handled differently, that might not have happened. But, on the other hand, it's reached the national press in a big way, so that in that way, and the whole thing is going to be cleared out quickly, and hopefully everybody's fears will be allayed, and by the beginning of next week, the school will be back to its normal numbers. So in that respect, I think it's been very helpful.
One further point from you, Dr. Chisholm. Can factor VIII blood plasma used for the treatment of haemophiliacs ever be contaminated in such a way again?
Well, since the beginning of April, all blood that's used to make the factor VIII is being screened at source, and all the blood is now known to be antibody negative.
So it can't be contaminated in such a way again?
It does not possess the antibody, so it's all clear. And the same is true of blood donations. With testing is underway, and by the middle of this coming month, all blood donations will be known to be antibody negative.
Dr. Chisholm, thank you very much indeed.
Well, in America, it's a very different story, for while up to 50 pupils have been kept away from the Chandlers Ford school this week, across the Atlantic, in New York, thousands of parents have organised a boycott of schools because they've learned that one of the pupils in the city has AIDS. They don't know who the child is or what school is involved. Education officials simply won't tell them. As Martin Bell reports, the parents are adamant that their children will not share a classroom with a victim of the AIDS disease.
It was the first day of school in New York City, but in 2 school districts, 10,000 pupils, a quarter of the total, never showed up, and parents demonstrated angrily because an unidentified 7-year-old had been allowed to attend classes.
No one's sure of exactly what's going on with this disease, and I don't want to take chances with my children. I love them too much. We love our children. We want them in school when it's safe.
Thing is, we don't know where he is, so we'd rather not take the chance.
They keep the kids out if they have measles and chickenpox. Kid has AIDS. It makes no sense to me.
I don't want my son sick. No way. I'd rather have him home, and he's safe.
Experts in disease control say that there's no evidence AIDS can be spread through casual classroom contact. Some mothers agree.
I'm a nurse, and I feel if the child isn't sick and there's no way of the other children contacting what she has, there's no reason why she shouldn't go to school.
The fear of AIDS is now spreading faster than the epidemic itself. It's a fear communicated to the children.
I don't think they should send them in, because the other kids are going to catch them.
Like new kids in the school, you're afraid to make friends with them because you don't know what they got.
Nothing like this has happened before, and the education of children is being set at risk.
Well, joining us now in New York is one of the parents, Mr. Sam Granera, who at the moment is heading a legal action at the Supreme Court to ban all children carrying AIDS from the city's schools. Mr. Granera, at the end of the week as we are thousands of children still away from school in New York?
Well, there is demonstrations and picketing. I think you will find that in front of the courthouse where the legal action is taking place. But, of course, many children are back in the classrooms.
It is a very extreme step, isn't it, your legal action? Is it really necessary? Because, over here we're told that the risk is zero.
Well, I don't believe that, and I would defer with your medical experts. We've been heard through medical testimony that we have brought into the courtroom that we should be cautious if a child with active AIDS is going to be in a classroom within a city school.
Now, you talk about your boy, or is it girl, we don't know, in New York being an active AIDS sufferer. Would it make any difference if the child was simply carrying AIDS antibodies?
Well, I think the information with regard to the antibodies is not in yet. The jury is out. And I think before that decision is made, I would certainly as a parent and certainly as a school official would like to have as much medical testimony available to me so that I could make an adequate decision for the health and safety of all the children.
Now, the child here has been identified. How much do you know about the child in your New York case? I know you don't know whether it's a boy or girl we're talking about.
Yes, besides not knowing whether it's a boy or girl, the child has not been identified. We find it incomprehensible that city officials have not told local school officials like us who this child is, so that we could take certainly adequate precautions. However, the medical testimony that is coming out in the courtroom goes with our feeling that the child should be in some way identified to the proper school officials.
Is there real fear in New York?
Yes, I think there is concern. If we want to call it fear or hysteria, I think the reason why we have that here is because there's a lack of knowledge, and that creates fear and hysteria. If we get the knowledge, which we are asking for, and I have to say it's too bad that it's coming out in a courtroom, then I hope that the fear and hysteria will diminish.
If your action fails, what then? Are we going to see thousands of children taken out of school again?
That I can't answer for you, but certainly I think what we've asked for in terms of the court forum, we have gotten. And I think from there, we will certainly educate the general public to this the issue with this communicable disease. And that is that there are so many unanswered questions that the medical experts must get together in some kind of a symposium, bring all the information together, dialogue together, and then get the information out to the general public so that they can make intelligent decisions with regard to their own children and the children of people who we represent, and that's the school district.
Well, we'll be watching the outcome of your legal action, of course, over here with great interest. Mr. Guarnero, thank you very much for joining us in New York this evening.
Thank you very much.
Well, now, Tony Taylor and Elizabeth Lovegrove, you both have children at Scantabout. Tony Taylor, you've kept your child away. Having seen that American experience, don't you feel just perhaps a little guilty that you've allowed yourself to become a touch hysterical through fear and panic and all the rest of it?
Bruce, let me make it quite clear that the people of Chandlers Ford are not hysterical. They're completely rational. But there are a few of the parents, including myself, that are undecided.
But what made you keep your two children away?
Well, because with the information that we have before us, in our opinion, humble though it may be, it's not conclusive.
Right. I'll come to Elizabeth Lovegrove now. What do you think of the parents like Tony Taylor who've kept their children away?
Every parent has the right to decide what they're going to do about their own child.
You've no further thoughts on what they've done?
Well, I think the whole situation did, in fact, become escalated, most unfortunately because we didn't have sufficient information at one stage. But I still feel that every parent must make up their own mind.
Right. Today, as we've said, the figure went down to 13. This Friday evening, Tony Taylor, will you be deciding to put the school uniforms back on Monday?
I think with the reassurances that we've had during the week, subsequent to the original meeting that we had last Friday, and the views that we've since heard expressed, I think, yes, I should be sending my children back on Monday.
That's two more back on Monday.
To Scantabout, yes, to Scantabout.
Right.
Because of the environment that exists at Scantabout and the way that it's been handled at Scantabout.
Right, splendid. What's the effect, do you think, finally, on the school this week? Has it been damaging, or do you think it's bonded together everybody?
I think there are 2 points here. One, I don't think it does children any good, in fact, to be subjected to the sort of media coverage we've had. The staff in the school have responded extremely well and attempted to create the same normal environment for our children, all credit to them. Perhaps there has been some bonding of feeling, yes. I think certainly after Wednesday night's meeting, a great number of parents, myself included, having been reassured, felt that we did stand united and that we wanted, above all, to support Peter and his parents and the school.
So, good and bad. Tony Taylor, Elizabeth Lovegrove, thank you very much indeed. Well, now, as soon as Hampshire Education Authority was informed by Peter's parents about the boy's condition, the authority faced a difficult decision. Should it take the child out of the school and place him in a special establishment, or should it allow him to continue his education as normal with his friends at Scantabout Primary? The authority took the decision knowing full well that some parents might, through fear and anxiety, call for the boy's removal or demand transfers to other schools for their own children. It wasn't an easy decision to make, but it now seems that not all teachers may be happy about it or how it was made. These documents, which are correspondence this week between union officials on the matter, suggest the main teaching unions want an urgent meeting to discuss the handling of the case. At least one union was considering the exclusion of the child from the school. In addition, the unions are concerned that although Peter's condition was known to the authority in May, teachers at the school were only informed last week, 4 months later. Richard Clark, why didn't you tell the teachers at Scantabout in good time?
Well, I think your introduction is factually wrong, Bruce, if I may say so. I knew, my area education officer knew, on the very first day of this term, the 2nd of September. That day we agreed to employ additional welfare assistance to make sure that the precautions that we had ascertained from the area health authority ought to be followed could be followed. And Friday of that same week, we called a meeting of the teachers in the school. It was a matter of days within the week that we talked to them.
Now, the headmaster, who's part of the authority,
yes,
knew in May.
Yes, indeed, because there are matters of medical confidentiality. It was only when the parents had made it clear to him, and through him to us, that they were prepared for the matter to be dealt with openly, that it was brought to our attention.
Alan Leach, what's your main concern over the way it's been handled?
I think our main concern is the lack of liaison between the education authority and the medical services. The medical services in the county certainly knew in May, and there was no procedure to bring to the attention of the educational authorities any possible risk associated with the boy's AIDS antibody problem. And we want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We want to make sure that, in fact, there's a procedure laid down which head teachers who have this situation to deal with will, in fact, follow immediately, and hence allay public worry.
So you're simply worried that you weren't told all the facts?
We're worried we were not told all the facts. We were also bothered because there's no procedure. There's no procedure laid down from the Department of Education and Science. There's no procedure laid down from the County Council, and head teachers are left in a very difficult position of not knowing who to turn to and whether they should ask for advice from someone. They turned to the medical services. The medical services did not turn to the education authority. I think Richard Clark is right, and the moment he knew, the educational authority did everything correctly to allay fears about the problem.
Dr. Chisholm has said earlier in this programme that there are lots of Peters, unidentified, to the schools. Now, do you want to know who they are?
We reckon that if the figures given by the Haemophilia Association are right, then statistically Hampshire might have as many as 15 such children. The risks, we are quite clear, are absolutely minimal. As soon as the medical authorities and the parents feel that they must come to us, then we now think we have a clear procedure. You see, Bruce, it's clear to me we've got two responsibilities as an education authority. First of all, to make sure that we provide a safe environment for all children, and that goes for all teachers as well. And we are now quite satisfied that those conditions can be met.
So you want to know who these other children are?
If the health authorities come to the conclusion that that's in the best interest of the child, the sooner they tell us, the sooner we shall be happy to deal with the situation.
I mean, how are parents going to react to this new knowledge this evening, that their children are playing games with boys who have exactly the same condition as Peter in Chandlers Ford?
Well, I think that what we need to do is to give parents information. In other words, we need to reassure them that, in fact, any possible risk is minimal, and that we are, in fact, taking the kind of precautions that Richard Clark has mentioned. And in any school where a head teacher knows that there is a child like that, this kind of system comes into action in order to, in fact, reassure people.
So in that case, I mean, you are saying you want names revealed to you?
I believe head teachers want to know who they are in order that they can reassure people that the situation is under control. But to do that, there's got to be cooperation between the different health units in the county council area and the different area education offices.
Now, this whole thing could happen again, couldn't it? If at the end of this week the numbers at Chandlers Ford hadn't gone down, would it have sparked a real crisis, do you think, in the educational system?
Well, we were very conscious of the fact that we're guinea pigs. This is the first publicly known case in this country. We were very worried, in the sense that it was becoming public against a background of hysteria, as you saw in the United States. We felt our obligation was to deal with this matter as levelly as we could, and I'm very grateful to staff, to parents, and indeed to Peter's parents in Chandlers Ford to enable that to happen.
But you must be breathing a sigh of relief, surely, because it could have gone the other way. Now, what would have happened? Would that have been a complete crisis?
Well, it was unknown territory. One couldn't predict the outcome. It would have meant that we would have had to have withdrawn Peter, And I think at that stage there would have had to have been very urgent consideration nationally as to how children of this kind could be dealt with.
Alan Leach, what do you think? If the parents at Chandlers Ford had forced the hand of the authority, would that have produced a crisis in education?
Yes, it would have produced a crisis in the county, and it would have produced a crisis nationally, I think, because this is a test case. We were able to reassure our members about the degree of risk involved in this. We received detailed guidance, we were able to give them this guidance, and therefore our members were quite happy to continue working normally. Had our members not been able to be reassured, then clearly our members, the teachers in the school, might have been saying, we don't want the boy in the school, in which case I think that we would have had a serious problem for this school and for the country in general in dealing with this kind of situation.
So will Chandlers Ford be regarded as a blueprint, not just a guinea pig?
I think it will go down in the educational annals as a school that we remember for years to come, because it's the first of its type.
Alan Leach, Richard Clark, thank you very much indeed. I want to go now to our London studio and talk to Dr. Anthony Pinching. Dr. Pinching, you're the leading medical specialist on AIDS. How do you assess the implications of the week's events in Chandlers Ford?
I think we've seen ordinary people being presented with the real facts about AIDS and the virus that causes it, and making up their own minds that it is indeed safe to send their children to school, and that there is no fear of patients like this one in the community, whether they carry the antibodies or are ill. They had incorrect information in the past from some of the less responsible elements of the media. They now have the facts, and they made the right decision.
Dr. Pinching, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's end this special South on 2 inquiry with the thoughts of the people at the very heart of the matter, the thoughts of Peter's parents. Good night.
We don't really have the choice. If we were to move Peter, for example, to another school, we have the same problem, whereas other parents tend not to have that problem. So they have a choice. We don't really have that choice.